Hey guys, welcome back. This is a story about what if Izuku had a bone manipulation quirk with one for all. Changes occur in his life when he finally awakens his own quirk. Before we start, thank you for the support in the last video. This really means a lot to me. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and to leave a like in this video, and you can suggest a My Hero Academia fanfiction with a link in the comments if you want me to read it, and check the description for the creator of this great fanfic and support them for making this fanfic. So let's start. Chapter 2: The Starting Line of the Dream. Izuku began comically cleaning his ears, hoping that his hearing somehow didn't get damaged in the fight. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" he said in obvious confusion. All Might's response was to burst out laughing. That face never gets old. Izuku began thinking, inheriting abilities? Is that even possible? Then again, quirks have always been a mystery. And to add to that, there's my quirk. Yes, my quirk does have some similarities to my parents', but compared to theirs it's completely different. His thoughts were interrupted by All Might. "I have many secrets, but there's no reason to lie about this." All Might then held out his hand and let his palm glow with power. Izuku just stared at it with awe. This quirk has been passed on from one hero to another, becoming stronger and stronger as it passes on. But not just the power, but the responsibility passes on as well. This is the quirk I inherited. It's called One for All. Izuku was shocked. He'd never heard of a quirk that could be transferred from one person to another. Amongst many, only one question comes to mind. But why choose me to wield such responsibility? At this question, All Might just smiled and pointed at Izuku. "I've been searching for a successor for a long time now, and back there, you showed me your heroic spirit. You showed me that when evil emerges you will be there to step up and face it. That is why I chose you." Izuku wanted to cry. His idol was not only praising him, but also revealing his secrets. Not only that, he's entrusting him with great responsibility. All Might began with that, "Young Midoriya, I ask you once again, will you inherit my power and the responsibility that comes with it?" He took one step closer to Izuku. "Will you be the successor of One for All?" Izuku knew this was a no-brainer. All Might has just deemed him worthy to wield his power and entrusted him with his secret. Izuku stared determinedly at All Might and answered with conviction. "Yes, sir. I accept." All Might beamed at the response. "Excellent. Now meet me at the Dagoba Municipal Beach tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll start your training, so you better get some rest tonight," he said in an excited voice. Midoriya Residence. As Izuku made it to his home with a skip to his step, he was immediately questioned by his mother, who had seen the news. It took a while, but she was eventually convinced that he was all right. He went to his room where Temi was sleeping on floor, clearly waiting for Izuku. Once awake, she joined Izuku, who was sitting on his bedside. He placed Temi on his lap and began petting her with a smile. "Life's always been interesting for me, but this takes the cake. To be honest, I'm a bit nervous to have this much responsibility." "What do you think?" he asked, looking down on his companion, only to receive light snores mixed with purrs as a response. Izuku chuckled. "Yeah, you're right, a hero shouldn't be hesitant about this. Thanks for listening, bud." He then gently levitated Temi onto her bed. With that done, Izuku laid down, thinking about All Might's quirk and everything that came with it. A successor, huh? With that final thought, he fell asleep thinking about the future. Municipal Beach. Once Izuku arrived at the beach, he immediately noticed the mountains of junk that the beach was covered with. "What a dump," he joked to himself as he glanced around. Though he was right, at first glance the place would appear to be nothing but a junkyard. He was then startled when a familiar voice called out to him. "Midoriya, my boy. Glad to see you're here early for your training." All Might then got a proper look at Izuku. Standing a respectable 5 feet 7 inches, wearing a blue tracksuit, with a white stripe running down his pants. He seemed to have some muscle, indicating that he has at least done some training in his spare time. "Not to doubt you, but why here?" asked Izuku as he began surveying the area again, making sure no one was here to see this. Because we're going to clean this place, restoring it to its former glory, while we train you use your quirk as well as one for all, said All Might, also known as Toshinori Yagi. Before splitting up yesterday, All Might made a point to reveal his real name to Izuku, that way he would at least know how to address him in public while he is in his smaller form. Huh. Makes sense, Izuku said, nodding in understanding. Now young Midoriya, I know you have a quirk, but from what I've seen it isn't a normal one. After receiving a nod he continued, I will change your training regime once I have a better grasp on your quirk, and how well you can use it. Izuku then began to take a deep breath. Okay, so my quirk is named Energized Bones. He began explaining details, how he can create weapons made of bones and levitate objects. His passive abilities, and how he can essentially make his bones and weapons stronger. He then began summoning hand-held weapons, barriers made of bones, and even a small gaster blaster to demonstrate his power. By the end of it, All Might was honestly confused, but he did have something to say. Weird. All Might stated with a clearly confused face. That's what I said. Izuku said as he began laughing at his mentor's expression. Suffice to say, he now knew how All Might felt when he told him about One for All. After calming himself down, he eagerly awaited his mentor's assessment. All right, I believe I have a good idea on how your quirk works based on what you told me. All Might nodded, silently thanking that this type of power never ended up in the hands of villains. And that Izuku had a strong drive to be a hero. All the more reason why he would gladly trust his power to him. Izuku and Toshinori then began talking with each other, discussing the best way to train Izuku and his quirk, as well as discussing possible strategies and fighting styles, as well as including studies, because well, there's no point on having great power without having a mind to wield it. By the end of it, the plan was intense. It wasn't going to be easy, that's for sure, but he knew the importance of accomplishing what he himself and All Might had set him to do. With a big grin, All Might turned into his buff form. With everything settled, let's see what you've got. Izuku shared his grin as he began surrounding objects around them, with a green glow as he started levitating them. They both shared a happy laugh, knowing that these next 10 months were going to be the most interesting they both had. 5 months later. Looking around, All Might was astounded on how clear the beach looked. The water looked clear and the shores were clear of any signs of junk. It honestly looked like a different place. And to put the cherry on top, the beach had a clear view of the horizon. He can see why people loved this place before the whole garbage situation started. And thanks to the efforts of Izuku, this was all possible. 5 months and this place looks practically new. His control over his own quirk is astounding. Able to create moves which differ depending on the weapon and situation. Then there's his style. He can switch from stationary to an offensive style. His abilities also allow him to catch his opponents off guard. He was brought out of his thoughts when Izuku walked towards him, eagerly awaiting the next phase of his training. He then went to his buff form and stood in front of Izuku with pride. Young Midoriya, you have far exceeded my expectations. Not only have you cleared the beach in half the time, but also proved to me that I chose the right successor. All Might stated proudly. Izuku had a huge grin on his face, knowing that he made his idol and family proud. Speaking of family, before the training, Izuku informed his mother that he met All Might and offered to train him for his heroism during the sludge villain incident. While of course sparing the details on All Might's secret. She was hesitant at first before she remembered her son's act in saving not only Temi, but Bakugo as well. With a tearful hug and a happy meal from Temi, he trained with All Might. His thoughts were interrupted when All Might plucked one of the hairs from his head and held it in front of Izuku. With pride in his voice he started, "Take this to heart, Izuku. Something that you receive because you're lucky, and something that you are given because you are recognized, are different in essence. This is power that you earned because of your own effort." Izuku was at awe with what he said. That was until All Might said, "Eat this." He held out the hair towards Izuku, who looked at it in shock. "Huh," is all he managed to get out. All Might boomed in laughter and continued, "You need to eat this so that you gain my DNA for you to use one for all." I knew being a hero would mean being in hairy situations, but this is ridiculous, Izuku said with a laugh as he took the hair and stared at it. All Might laughed at the pun. Sometimes the real thing is much more of a letdown than most people think. In case you were wondering, the power can't be taken from you unless you allow it. Heh, that's a relief. Now then, he stared at the hair for a bit before he eventually placed the hair in his mouth and swallowing it. He then began looking at his body. "I don't feel any different." He then started summoning his weapons to find no change. All Might laughed softly at that. "Of course not. It needs time to be digested. Now then, young Midoriya, we need to start combat training." With that, Izuku looked at All Might with a shocked expression. "Wait, is that not dangerous? I mean, I haven't even used one for all yet." Young Midoriya, allow me to clarify, I meant a combat simulation." "Oh," Izuku replied, looking more relieved. "But where do we go?" With a big grin he stated, "I'm glad you asked. We're going to a training ground within UA campus." Izuku went wide-eyed and he could have sworn his jaw fell on the floor. He was going to be trained at UA. Though he couldn't help but feel as though this was unfair, so he had to ask All Might, "Is this even allowed? I mean, wouldn't it be seen as favoritism towards me, since it might give me an unfair advantage over others?" All Might stared at Izuku before a proud smile made its way to his face. "You still think of others, even when you're given a chance most would take without hesitation, proving how I made the right choice," he stated, causing Izuku to blush a bit from the praise. "But worry not, young Midoriya, the reason why I am suggesting this is because since you wield one for all, you will need a secure place where you can test your powers without causing unwanted damage," he firmly stated. At that he received a nod. Izuku understood what he meant. If he trained his quirk in public it might cause property damage, or worse, endanger lives. But in UA he can stretch his wings and learn to control it in a safer environment. "Well, better get started then." At that he received a proud smile from All Might. UA Underground Training Facility. As they reached the training grounds they were greeted by two figures that made Izuku stop in his tracks. It was Recovery Girl and Principal Niza. "Dang, I should have brought my notebook." He mentally scolded himself for missing an opportunity to receive autographs from other heroes. As he was about to pass out from excitement, the principal spoke, saving him from embarrassment. "Tashinori, is this your successor?" To which he received a nod. "Yes, Principal, allow me to introduce Midoriya Izuku, the successor of One for All." With hat he gestured Izuku to introduce himself. Masking his excitement as well as he could, he approached the two and held out his hand to the principal with a smile. "It's nice to meet you, sir." He stuttered a bit, earning a soft laugh from All Might and a giggle from Recovery Girl, seeing his emotional mask fail instantly. As he shook his hand, the principal stared at Izuku, then at his eyes. "He has that spirit in his eyes. I can see why you were chosen," he thought to himself. "Please, Izuku, there is no need to fear. Please use the training grounds as you see fit." With that, Principal Niza left, waving at them cheerfully. Tashinori and Recovery Girl then began leading Izuku to the training grounds. Izuku couldn't help but stare in awe at the training grounds. Weights, training dummies and enough space to allow movement was what this place had to offer. His amazement was interrupted when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Tashinori and Recovery Girl saw this and immediately rushed to his side. "My boy, what's wrong?" he asked in a tone of concern, but was replaced with an expression of awe at what he was seeing. Izuku's green eyes began glowing in a bright emerald green, signifying that One for All had been integrated into his system. Izuku's eyes turned back to normal, and he stared at All Might in awe, while he and Recovery Girl were looking at him with fond smiles. "How do you feel, young Midoriya?" All Might asked, barely hiding his excitement, while Recovery Girl just shook her head at the man's obvious excitement. Midoriya looked at them with a grin. "I feel powered up. It's like all my stats are boosted. I think even my stamina and energy increased." All Might just laughed. "Well, why don't we test it out then?" At that he received a nod. "So Izuku, step into the middle and hit this dummy while channeling One for All. Keep in mind there will be some knockback, so be careful," With that, All Might and Recovery Girl stood to the side, while Izuku stood in front of the dummy. Closing his eyes, he imagined his power flowing, the same way how he would channel his energy through his melee weapons and gaster blasters. Opening his eyes, he can feel the intense glow coming from them. With that, he reared his fist back, and with a deep breath he punched the dummy as hard as he could. The result was the dummy caving in on itself, and was sent flying to the other wall. Although his victory was short-lived when he felt pain shooting up his right hand. He fell to his knees and clutched his hand. Both pros ran towards Izuku, assessing the damage. When they reached Izuku, they saw him clutching his arm in agony. Recovery Girl immediately used her quirk to heal him. With that, Izuku's hand looked good as new. Interesting, your quirk appears to let you keep your bones intact. But from the looks of it, the same cannot be said for your skin and flesh, Recovery Girl stated as she assessed the damage. Right, training will help me get stronger, and allow me to help people better, at which he received smiles from the two pros. Izuku then grinned. If I'm not careful, I might as well be named as Bruised Wayne or something. He chuckled at his joke. All Might laughed heartily, while Recovery Girl just shook her head, seeing the moment ruined. And with that, Izuku began his last months of training before the UA exams. 5 months later, one day before the UA exams. Under the instructions of All Might, Izuku spent the day resting, as to not risk having a burnout during the exam day. It also helps that Recovery basically discussed giving Izuku a break. And by discussed I mean a walking cane to the noggin. Needless to say, the negotiations were short. As he sat down to have breakfast, he saw his mother, who was still making the rest of the food. Appearance-wise, she hasn't changed much. Thanks to Izuku developing a quirk, she was spared from years of stress eating, thus maintaining a good figure over the years. As he sat quietly, he couldn't help but think about the amount of progress he made these past 10 months with All Might, especially with the recent months during his UA training. He understood how his original quirk worked, and with the addition of One for All allowed him to go further, creating moves which would aid him in various situations where he may need to knock out, restrain, or rescue certain individuals. It also helped that he loved video games and anime, allowing him to become more creative with his quirk use. Plus, he was a nerd. In terms of appearance, Izuku gained a fair amount of muscle, but thanks to his outfit choices, which mostly consisted of hoodies and loose pants, it went mostly unnoticed, which suited Izuku just fine. In terms of height, Izuku grew a bit, standing at a height of 5 feet 9 inches. In terms of power, he was able to regulate the usage of One for All by limiting the energy used, thus lessening the risk of self-damage, allowing his body to adjust to his abilities. In terms of fighting styles, he had offensive, defensive, and surprise tactics. At one point, All Might asked him why was one of his styles consisting of him staying in one spot. The answer is simple: if they think that I would just stand there and take it, then I can catch them off guard when I actually move. Izuku, you're muttering again. His mother gently tapped him on the head, startling him a bit and making him look sheepish, while his mother just smiled at his antics. His mother would be a constant in his life, always going out of her way to support, and would cheer him up whenever he felt down. They talked about random topics until it was eventually time to head to bed. Thanks for the dinner, Mom, Izuku thanked as he stood up. As he reached his room, he began writing on his notebook, where he wrote ideas on tactics and attacks. Once satisfied, he closed his notebook and placed it onto his desk. Temmie mewled as she sat on Izuku's bed. Turning around, he smiled and gave Tem a rub on the back, at which she purred. After one last pet, he levitated her to bed and went to his own bed. Tomorrow's the day, he thought as he went to Dreamland UA Academy grounds. After giving his mother a heartfelt goodbye, he arrived at the UA entrance wearing the standard school uniform. Once arriving, he marveled the sight before him. Even if he spent a few months earlier training here, he still couldn't help but feel impressed. Looking around, he could see possible future heroes making their way to the building. Not wasting any time, he was about to go in until he heard a familiar voice. Out of the way, Deku, a familiar voice came. Turning around, he saw Bakugo making his way to him with a scowl on his face. Izuku just grinned. Bonjour, sunshine. He laughed a bit. Bakugo, while still scowling, just grunted and kept making his way to the building. Ever since discovering his quirk and the rescue from the sludge villain, Bakugo simmered down and actually managed to have conversations with Izuku while maintaining his Bakugo self. Guess respect is earned through strength with Bonehead, Izuku thought as he made his way to the building, but something caught his eye. Turning to the left, he saw a girl with short brown hair making her way to the building rather excitedly. He would have just kept going until he noticed that she was on a collision to an uneven part of the road. And as predicted, she ended tripping. On instinct, Izuku extended his left hand, covering the girl in a green glow, and stopped her from falling on the floor and hurting herself. Clearly confused, the girl kept looking around. Did I use my quirk on myself? She said in mild panic as she squirmed in place. Nope. Turning her head, she saw Izuku with a grin and an extended hand that's glowing green. After carefully placing her on her feet, he added, "That was close. It would have been bad luck if you fell." He then gave her a friendly smile, a gesture she gladly returned. "Thanks for the save." She then extended her hand. "My name is Uraraka Ochako. It's nice to meet you," she greeted cheerfully. With a smile, Izuku returned the friendly gesture. "Nice to meet you too, Izuku Midoriya." With that, the two went into the building together while talking about random topics. Once inside, they were told to do a written exam that Izuku was prepared for. Thanks to his analysis, it allowed him to answer the questions with ease. Exam grounds. Finally came the part that others were either waiting or dreading. Heading to the locker room, he changed into his outfit, which consisted of white t-shirt topped with a blue hooded jacket, baggy black pants, and gray running shoes. "Don't worry, I have a costume idea already. This is just debut XD." The point of this outfit was to make others believe that he wasn't much, therefore not drawing attention to himself. Though he plans to get new clothes with better material from the support course in the school. Once inside, he was taken back by the sheer size of the test area, which was a literal city. As Izuku was thinking of strategies, he saw Uraraka taking deep breaths, trying to calm herself down. With a small smile, Izuku slowly made his way the girl, only to be stopped by a tall teen in glasses. "Excuse me, green-haired boy." Turning around, he saw a tall teen with glasses walking up to him while moving his arms like a robot. Izuku had to suppress a chuckle. He then noticed the mufflers on his legs, signifying him that he possesses some sort of speed quirk. "Can I help you?" Izuku asked as the glasses guy stopped in front of him. Glancing at Uraraka, he began. "That girl appears to be concentrating. Are you trying to distract her?" he said in a stern tone. Izuku merely raised an eyebrow and began chuckling lightly, surprising the teen. He waved his hands calmly and said, No, I actually wanted to help her calm down. You see, we met each other at the entrance today." With that, the teen with glasses looked shocked before guilt began to appear on his face. Glasses boy then did something interesting. Glasses bowed in a perfect 90 degrees angle. "I wish to apologize to you for falsely accusing you. Clearly you're just being a good friend." Glasses guy waited for a response. Unfortunately, Izuku couldn't hold it in anymore and began laughing a bit, shocking the teen and hurting his feelings a little bit. After calming down, he waved his hand. "It's fine, just calm down," he said with a grin, calming the taller teen. Izuku gave a small smile and stuck out his hand, surprising him. "Let's try this again. My name is Izuku Midoriya. What's yours?" The taller teen smiled as he grabbed his hand. "My name is Tenya Ida. It's a pleasure to meet you." Izuku threw his thumb back towards Ochako with a smile. "I'll just help my friend calm her nerves," Izuku said as he turned around, but not before looking back. "Oh right, good luck Ida, I hope to see you in at the hero course," Izuku called back. Ida smiled and bowed in a perfect angle again towards Izuku. "And I wish the same to you, Midoriya." The green-haired teen waved back with a grin as he made his way to Ochako. Izuku tapped her on the shoulder, nearly making her jump. Ochako turned around and smiled. Izuku, you're here too, she said with a smile. Izuku shrugged with a smile and nodded. Yep, pretty small world, huh? At which he received a chuckle. He then grinned. I just came here to wish you good luck is all. That seemed to make Ochako smile brightly as she took a deep breath. Thanks, good luck to you too, she said while giving him a thumbs up. Izuku smiled back before he made his way to the front of the crowd. As he drew closer to the entrance, he was getting strange looks from the people. The heck? What's a civilian doing here? Does he think we're going on a field trip or something? Probably a non-combat quirk. He looks pretty plain. Squirt over there is going to get crushed. Izuku ignored all the voices and focused on the task at hand. What the crowd didn't know is that those are the reactions or what Izuku was looking for. With that, Izuku took a deep breath before putting on his hood and placing his hands in the pockets of his hoodie. If anyone looked closely, they would see Izuku's eyes glowing green in the shadow of the hood. This moment is what all that training led to. That he could become a hero who would fight and save people. With the goal in mind, the present Mike spoke through the PA system at the top of his lungs. Start. With the crowd distracted and looking at present Mike, Izuku wasted no time and teleported away before anyone could notice.